All right, everyone, welcome back to the STAG Project. I'm your host, Sebastian Valentin, and today we're back again for yet another book review. And now this book is one of my favorite books that I've read in the past 6 months. I would say it's definitely the one where I've seen the most application that I can use in my own life, and definitely the one with the greatest lessons so far. I'm still reading 2-3 books at a time and just trying to dissect them all, but this one has honestly been great. And it's another one by Ryan Holiday. We have Ego is the Enemy. This one came part of a set, which was Obstacles Away, Ego is the Enemy, and Stillness is the Key. I'm currently on Stillness is the Key, and I'm going to do a book review when I'm done with that one, but I just started it a few days ago. Anyways, let's get on to this book review. So like I mentioned, Ego is the Enemy is another book by Ryan Holiday, part of this little set that he made. And this one focuses more on the sphere of influence a person has. And really the one thing that causes a lot of our own problems. And that being ego. And the book, I like the stance it takes. And I'll explain that deeper into the book review. But just as a quick summary and overview of the book, it gives us a sophisticated and more complex look at what the ego is and different ways you can kind of like flip your ego, or flip the switch rather, so your ego isn't taking over and you end up making mistakes that are irreparable, and actions that you didn't want to take. It really is about self-control. In the end of the day, the book it just hones in on self-control. And one of the biggest points is not to look for external control. It explicitly talks about that in many chapters. So I would say the overarching, the premise, the summary of the book is to really learn how to control yourself, control those internal talks, the self-talk you have going on, because that really is what's going to dictate your ego. The book is very similar to The Obstacles Away in the sense that it's split up into 3 parts. And I like how these 3 parts or sections of the book, they follow where ego can get in the way. They're labeled as kind of detriments caused by ego. So the first one is aspire, when you aspire to do something. The second one is when you succeed. And the other one is a failure. In all 3 of those categories, Ryan Holiday explains how ego can get in the way and how ego can ultimately harm you. But he also explains ways on how to combat that and how to make sure you don't let ego become your enemy, as the book title suggests. If I had to summarize the book in one sentence, I would say Ego is the Enemy shows you who's squandering your true potential. That is a perfect way to look at it. And you come to find that it's yourself and your ego, but there are multiple ways to stop that and to really reach your full potential by controlling the ego. So now that I'm done with the summary, I'm going to get into the results of the book. What did I gain from the book? What did I learn from the book? This is standard to the last couple book reviews. And again, I'm going to keep mentioning it, but I'm going to follow a very specific order when I do these books. For this one specifically, though, I'm going to split it up into the 3 sections of the book. So I'm going to look at the results for the Aspire section, the Success section, couldn't think of it there, and then the Failure section. So just starting off with the Aspire section, the biggest thing that I learned from this part was to always seek to learn as much as possible. Like, be a lifelong learner, fall in love with learning. And humility is really what keeps you there wanting to learn more. And that's the thing that destroys the ego. Because ego often stems from when you know something about a certain topic or something, you feel like, I know enough where I don't need to seek any additional help or whatever. You might think like you're an expert, you've been doing this for years, and that you don't need any more help, or that you don't need any more advice on anything. You can just kind of handle it yourself. But really that is ego speaking, because we should always be lifelong learners. We will never know everything. There's a quote that says, the more you learn, or the more you know, it's actually like the less you know, because there's it's all so expansive. Like, the more you increase your knowledge, the less you actually know. So really, it's about being humble, as Ryan Holiday explains, and I'll give some examples that he gave and examples that I found in my life and through other books that I read. But really, it's all about being humble in this sense. The first example that came to mind when I was thinking about this was from a book I read earlier this summer, Ikigai. It kind of explains how to live a longer life and like how to find your purpose. And one of the things that was found in people who live over 100, people who, have a really long life and they live for a long time, is that they were always seeking to learn something. They had a craft, and that could be anything, playing guitar, creating content, whatever it may be. Like, they had a craft in some sense. Like farming was one of the examples in the book. But they kept doing it and they kept learning about it. And once they felt like they mastered it to where it didn't, kind of feed their purpose anymore, they went on and they found something else. The point is that they kept on learning. They kept on striving to go to the next thing to learn. So it's an extremely important thing we should take into consideration when thinking about being a lifelong learner. The example that was given in the book, Ego is the Enemy, is about Kirk Hammett from the band Metallica. He had taken Dave Mustaine's spot in the band, and he had been with Metallica for a while, and he realized, I'm good and I'm with Metallica, but I need more. I need to learn more. I still feel like there's some gaps in my guitar playing ability where I can learn more and I can, be better for the band. And that's the mentality, that's the mindset we all have to hone in on. Is, I may be great. I may be part of the greats in whatever field I study or whatever field I'm a part of, but there's still always much more to be learned. And there's a great quote here that I love, and I highlighted it as soon as I saw it, and it's, to become great, someone needs to have someone better than them so they can learn, someone lesser than them so they can teach, and someone equal to them so they can challenge themselves against them. And that's beautiful. That gives you a lot of perspective, and that gives you a very easy guide on how to be a lifelong learner and how to always be growing and learning from the things around you. The second lesson that was very pivotal to me when I was reading the Aspire section of Ego is the Enemy is to get out of your own head and ground yourself in the present. To me personally, this is just something that I know I often do. I'm often stuck in my head sometimes, and I'm not in the present moment. I'm just kind of thinking of, what am I going to do later, or what happened back then, or whatever. I'm not, and it's not all the time, but I do find myself being in moments of weakness where I'm just thinking about the past or thinking about the future, and it's a bad cycle. It's better when I do find myself living in the present. I find it much more helpful to myself, and I don't, find myself making up stories or using my imagination too harshly. And we'll talk about the stories part in the next part, the next section for success, because that was one of the biggest things he wrote down, Ryan Holiday, and it really impactful for me. But getting out of your head is really the first step to that. And there's a quote here. It says, "Living clearly and presently takes courage. Don't live in the haze of the abstract. Live with the tangible and the real, especially if it is uncomfortable." Something that comes to mind when I read that quote was it's okay to be bored sometimes. It's okay to just sit in your room and do nothing. Sometimes you need that calmness, you need that stillness to just breathe and just analyze what's happening to you in the present moment. And then you can apply that to, your hobbies and other things. So you like going hiking, don't be on your phone, or if you have like a smartwatch, don't be on that. Focus on the nature. Focus on, if you're with someone, focus on the people around you. Just pick something and be present in that moment. Don't let your thoughts wander too far where you're thinking about things that have nothing to do with what's in front of you. Another really important point made in this whole argument, this whole notion, is that people aren't watching your every single move and waiting to judge you and just pounce on you for whatever reason, in a general sense. And at least mature people don't do that. Like, we need to let go of this notion that we're like these special movie stars, that everyone's watching our every move, and like we need to be in our heads like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do? Like, how can we appeal to the people around us and all that in every single fashion? Like, learn to let go and learn to just be in the present and be comfortable and okay with who you are, even if that sometimes means like it's going to be uncomfortable for other people, in the sense of like you might have an awkward interaction with someone. You might be a little socially awkward or whatever. Like, obviously that's stuff you can work on. The social skills, the keyword skills, is something you can work on. But like, don't beat yourself up and don't say in your head like, oh, I'm so weird, like I'm so awkward. That negative self-talk, that really it really builds your ego. You think you're like this special being, but we all go through these things. We all have this talk where we might think we're awkward, or we might not, like how a conversation's going or something like that. Just realize it happens to 99% of everyone else. Not even 100% of everyone else. Everyone else has these thoughts or has had them at some point in their life. So, step out of that box and be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Moving on to the second section of the book, which is the success section, and me talking about what I learned from this section. And the first thing, like I mentioned, is to not tell yourself stories. I think inherently storytelling is a very good thing. It can contribute to people's imaginations, to their creativity and that kind of thing. When you're telling stories truthfully, and it's more of a collaborative event. If you're telling stories to yourself in your own head, though, as Ego is the Enemy explains, it can get pretty messy, because you'll have, whenever you talk about yourself, you're more biased to have a false pretense about what actually happened in said story. You attribute things, you attribute your success to straight up luck, or like I got out of that hard situation because I'm so great or whatever. And that right there is ego at work. That is ego getting in your mind and telling you, you're better, or this, that, and the other thing, that you did that all on your own. And that right there is toxic. It's poison for your own mind, your own soul. Really, the way you want to be thinking about it is if you're going to tell a story, tell every part. Tell the gruesome bits. Tell the parts where you were down on your luck and you were like suffering and you didn't know what to do. Like, get into the nitty gritty of what the bad is, because then you can identify the parts that need work when a similar situation comes up in the future. You can identify those parts and know what to do better. It's like you don't give yourself feedback when you let ego take control. And without feedback, you're not going to get any better. You're just going to repeat the same mistakes, and you're going to have the same gruesome tale, but covered up in a bunch of glitter. And what's the point of that? If your purpose in storytelling, and this is where it leads to storytelling with others, if your purpose in storytelling is to help other people grow, you have to go through the parts that were rough. That's where you gain the most growth. It's that paradox. It's in the uncomfortable that we truly become comfortable. A great quote found in the book is to keep your identity small and to make it about the work and principles behind it, not about the glorious vision that makes a good headline. Don't try to buff up your story to be this nice, beautiful thing when in reality there was struggle involved. People often skip the struggle, and this leads to people being like paranoid and entitled They get in this loop where it's like, because I did these great things or whatever, like, I'm entitled to greatness. I'm going to achieve greatness no matter what. And then the paranoia comes in when they look around other people and they think they're trying to get after them. Like, those other people are trying to get after them and destroy their notion, idea, or dream of being this big figure. Like, this all stems from ego, and it all stems from the fact that we're not staying humble, and that you want to control the uncontrollable. Like I said earlier, it's all about, the book really is about self-control. Keyword self. What is in your own sphere of control, not controlling other things, because that's when ego like gets really heavily involved. It's when we try to control the uncontrollable. And I mean, in turn, that's what leads to those bad things, those like having paranoia, a strong sense of entitlement, those types of things. And when your thoughts are muddied in this sense, when your judgment is clouded, you're going to make bad decisions, you're going to make regrettable actions. It's like I explained earlier, that this is why ego is the enemy. It will destroy you because the thoughts that are produced through ego will lead to actions that don't truly speak to your potential. They don't truly speak to your character. Because we all have the ability to change those thoughts and to shift them into a more humble and more stoic way. And for the last section here, we have failure. What did I learn from the failure section of the book? And I think I wrote down the most for this one because there's a lot we can learn about our egos in failure. The first thing is to do things because you care about them and you're willing to do the effort. Life is a lot more simple, and you can find a lot more happiness in life and peace, inner peace, when you stop attaching yourself to the outcome. And there's a quote here: the less attached to our outcomes, the better. When fulfilling our own standards is what fills us with pride and self-respect. Essentially, do it for you. Do it because of the effort, the process to get whatever it is you're getting done. Don't do it because you're expecting something from someone else or expecting something to go a specific way that you're planning out in your head. No, do it because of the effort, the experience, the journey. I don't want to say that and just make it cliche. Everyone says, like, you know, it's all about the journey. It is. It literally is. And that is how we kill the ego in that sense. You know, you focus on the effort. And that goes back to also focusing in on the present. Another thing we learn is to know when to draw the line, when to stop. You know, if what you're doing, if you go, and it could be anything, like if you're pursuing a business opportunity or you're pursuing something else, you know, that takes a lot of your effort and a lot of your energy. This is actually the reverse of what I just talked about, but know when to let go. And sometimes you have to draw the line and be like, okay, what I'm doing is actually, it's hurting myself and it's hurting the people around me more, and it's not allowing me to see the next opportunity that's in line for me. Pride is getting in my way. Pride is a direct ally to ego, and it's getting right in my way. So those two things are really important to understand, and it's understanding them together, is putting in effort and doing it genuinely, but also realizing that sometimes you will have to draw the line. Sometimes an opportunity is not meant for you. It's just meant to give you experience. So then when the next opportunity comes around, that one might be meant for you, and the effort that you give in will lead to whatever you're seeking. Two very, very important things to understand and grow from. And the last thing that I want to point out in this failure section of the book was actually like the last chapter of the book, and that's to always love. Always find yourself giving love. Hate won't get you anywhere. It causes more mental strain, and it steals your peace, you know. Learn to forgive people and, you know, forgive the things that happen and laugh at life. Things will never go the way we want them to. we have to learn to accept that and to laugh at it. Find the joy in it. Find how you can change something from what is perceived as a negative situation into a positive one. And that starts with love. That starts with, someone is irritating you or whatever, and that starts with thinking in your head, I love that person. Like, it's what they're doing. It may be bothering me right now, but it's not about me. It's not about me being pleased, me getting everything I want. See, that's ego again taking over when it wants its way and nothing else. Learn to love, learn to laugh at the things. When you stub your toe, yeah, it hurts and you're gonna scream out like in pain, but also learn to laugh after. Like you placed your foot the wrong way, or whatever. Don't seek to just blame it on whatever you hit your toe on. Just laugh about it and move on. It'll probably happen again because some of us are more clumsy than others, but it's not. You shouldn't let those things completely override your emotions and override your entire life. Learn to let go. Learn to love. And there's a quote in here. It says, "In failure and adversity, it's so easy to hate. Hate defers blame. It makes someone else responsible." As I've talked about before, and I'll talk about in my next book review, which I already have in mind, is you're responsible for everything in your life. It may not be your fault that something may happen, but it's your responsibility to deal with whatever is put in front of you. And we have to learn to accept that responsibility accordingly. We can't deny it. We can't say, no, like, this is on them, like, it's their fault, or they're the ones responsible. No. If it's directly within your sphere of influence, your sphere of control, it's your responsibility. And it's something that you're going to have to deal with whether you like it or not. So from all of what I just said, what are the biggest things that I learned and am going to apply into my life? And so for me, one of the biggest things, I talked about it a little bit in this video, but it's to learn to let go, learn to laugh at life, and to find more inner peace through love. I think for me, like, that's a very important thing that I can start working on with the peers and the people around me. I can start showing them more love. I can be more patient towards them. That sort of, following in that genre, I guess, of thinking, if you want to put it that way. But really, for me, and these are things, obviously, when I say these are things I'm going to start applying in my life, it's because, for me personally, I struggle with them. And so, yeah, letting go and laughing more, that's something I can definitely do. Being more brutally honest with myself, as I just was, but being more brutally honest with myself while not completely degrading myself. Just having a better self-talk relationship with myself is something that I learned is extremely valuable in this book and will help defeat the ego and just help you be a more humble person, a more grounded person, in your values and what you believe, and not just, seeking to impress others or put on this facade. And then the last thing is to seek feedback from others, to learn more from the information that they give me based on how I act in front of them, like what their perceived notion of my actions, kind of what I can do to maybe combat where ego is seeping out. Because none of us are perfect, and it's not, I didn't just read the book Ego is the Enemy and now my ego's gone, defeated completely. Like, that's not how it works. It takes practice. It's a skill. It's a lifelong thing. It's something you have to continue, fighting at. And he explains that in the afterword of the book. It's like, ego is not something that just goes away. It's not something that just, you do one set of things and it's gone forever. No, it's something you keep working at. You have to keep working on the self-talk and getting feedback from others and realizing if you're doing something is wrong, to, look at it and fix it. All right, moving on to the strengths and weaknesses. Some strengths of the book. It is great. It is a great piece of literature to learn about ego and is easy, honestly, for anyone to understand. It has timeless knowledge that, is extremely applicable and anyone can use it. I mean, it is absolutely a very, very good book. And I don't want to just sit here and tell you like, oh my gosh, like this is the best book ever, like that kind of stuff. But I honestly found so many of the lessons learned in here applicable, and I didn't even go over all of them. I went over a very small amount of them, the most important ones to me. But there's still so many lessons within this book that can be used and can be applied. So it is an extremely strong book in that sense. The only weakness I would say is that there are some things that are a bit regurgitated. Like some chapters talk about essentially the same thing, more specifically in the Aspire section of the book and the Success part of the book. There are 2 chapters that are very similar, and they kind of just talk about the same thing, just kind of reworded. Other than that, some of the language in the book can be a little bit confusing for some people. It's still easy to understand a majority of the book. I would say there's some sections where, and especially towards the middle of the book, that it's a little bit harder to understand kind of what he's saying and kind of comprehend it. But overall, and it's an amazing book. It has a share of its strengths and weaknesses. And as a final recommendation, I would absolutely recommend this book to anyone. I wouldn't even say you have to be part of the development, self-help genre. Like, this book is about self-development, but learning about the ego is something I feel like everyone should do. Everyone has that part of them, and you should learn about it in ways to kind of combat it and make sure it doesn't take over your life, because then you're going to have a more peaceful life that way, you know? So, yeah, I recommend this book to absolutely anyone. There's so much knowledge in this book. There's so many great things that you can learn from, and you can teach to others too. That's one of the greatest parts of this book, is like a lot of this stuff, because it's so applicable, is also it's teachable. You can teach this stuff to other people. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this book review of Ego is the Enemy. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed doing this book review because this was one of my favorite books that I've read this entire summer. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any feedback for me or any suggestions for books, please leave them in the comments below. Make sure to just, if you guys can, share this video if you're interested in spreading this message. I would love for more people to just see this book review specifically, because the book is so impactful to me, and I feel like it can be impactful to so many other people. So once again, thank you for sticking around for the whole video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.